Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Raw Politics. Today, I want us to answer a very tough question. Is Raila Odinga a statesman or is he an opportunist? Why? Raila Odinga elicits the most emotion from Kenyans. I don't think there is any other politician who evokes emotions like Raila Odinga. There are those who really love the man and are willing to lay down their lives in defense of Raila Odinga. On the other hand, there are people who hate Raila Odinga so much that even if he said something that is true, they would oppose it. They don't want the man. And so those who like him insist that Raila Odinga is a Democrat who has given his all for the betterment of this country and should be respected as a statesman. Those who don't like him insist that this is a shameless opportunist who has taken advantage of every opportunity to benefit himself at the expense of other Kenyans. And since Raila Odinga cannot be both, we have to find out who the man is. I mean, Raila Odinga cannot be both a democratic statesman and at the same time be a selfish politician taking advantage of other Kenyans. And so in this video, we look at the prevailing facts to determine who Raila Odinga is. If that is a subject you are keen on, ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to stay tuned till the end. And if you are watching for the first time, take a moment, subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss subsequent videos. Like I said, Raila Odinga evokes a lot of emotions. There are people who like him and there are people who don't like him at all. Those who like him have reasons why they like him and they are willing to die for the man. Those who don't like him have reasons why they don't like him. Now, I'm not neutral on this. I am in the group of those who don't like Raila Odinga. Okay? So for me, this would have been a very easy answer. I would have just said Raila Odinga is a very selfish man who is taking advantage of every situation to benefit himself. But this is raw politics and you deserve better. So we don't go with the superficial. We don't just look at what is our emotions telling us. We go with what the facts are telling us. When I said I am one of the people who have been critical of Raila Odinga, this is what I meant. I have never voted for Raila Odinga, even though now I support him at AUC. And before you say that is hypocrisy or inconsistent, let me explain. I believe that emotional intelligence dictates that I should differentiate local politics from continental matters. If I differ with Raila Odinga's way of managing local politics, but somehow he's been nominated to represent my country in Addis Ababa, emotional intelligence dictates that I overgrow the local differences and rally behind my country. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have issues with Faith Kipyegon. Faith Kipyegon might be your neighbor or an ex-girlfriend. And so you may have issues. Okay? Perhaps you went to school together and you didn't agree on this and that. Perhaps you are also a fellow athlete who did not win. But if Faith qualifies for the Olympics and she is representing the country, you cannot then say, simply because you differ with her, now you are going to support Qatar, or you are now supporting a certain runner from Beijing whose name you can't even pronounce. That is called pettiness. That is what English describes as pettiness. Pettiness. You are watering down a very important matter using very mediocre issues. So if I differ with Raila locally, but he has been nominated to represent my country at Addis Ababa, I should grow up and support that as a patriot. That is why even if you have issues with the Harambee Stars coach, if there is a player there that picked your girlfriend and you're not happy, when Harambee Stars is playing against Malawi, you don't take that pettiness to that stage. You say Kenya is playing against Malawi. And as a Kenyan, you are expected to support your country. Standing behind your country does not demand that your emotions have to be appeased. Patriotism, ladies and gentlemen, dictates that even if I have issues with Raila locally, at the international stage, I have to support him. I didn't believe that Amina Mohammed was the best diplomat we could forward to AUC. But because she was forwarded there, I had to support her. We had to rally behind her. That is what people do. That is why when I see Gen Zs in their 40s mocking Raila, painting him dark, simply because he refused to join them in the anarchy of June, they have taken local differences to the international stage to support somebody from Djibouti whose name they can't even pronounce, simply because they have differences with Raila locally. That is mediocrity. That is lack of emotional intelligence. Even though I have not supported Raila locally, I believe that when he is representing my country at the international stage, it is my duty as a Kenyan to stand behind him. Because when he wins, it will be Kenya won. When he loses, if he loses, it will be Kenya lost. That is why I am supporting him. Back to our discussion. I am one of those people who have locally opposed Raila Odinga because I differ with how he handles politics. And so this would have been very easy for me to just say, if you asked me, is Raila a misunderstood statesman, or are we dealing with a selfish politician? Because of my history with him, the easier answer for me would be, he is just a selfish politician. But ladies and gentlemen, somebody told us that there are two ways of looking at a glass. You can say this glass is a half empty, that is the pessimist way of looking at things, or a half full, optimist way of looking at things. Somebody can look at how Raila has managed ODM in terms of internal democracy and other things and say Raila is the worst person they have ever seen. But another one would look at the fact that ODM has been in existence for 20 years when other parties come and disappear. And not just in existence as one of the majority parties in parliament. That is how he has managed the party. But let us look at the other side. Raila Odinga has had several handshakes with presidents. He had an handshake with Moi. He had an handshake with Kibaki. Raila had an handshake with Uhuru. And Raila is now closely working with William Ruto. Most of these handshakes, they come after revolt, meaning Raila goes into an election and then he doesn't agree with the result, whether justified or not, he doesn't agree with the result. And when he disagrees with the result, his supporters are likely to be chaotic. When they are chaotic, then there are two ways. That chaos continues until kingdom come, which works against the economy. Or there are talks. People sit down, Raila and the leadership, the existing leadership, sit down, find some compromise, and peace is restored. So, half empty. He goes into an election. If he doesn't win, he causes chaos, uses that chaos to bargain for deals. From that angle, you are looking at a very selfish man. Okay? Another one looks at it this way. He goes into election believing he will win. He is persuaded that the election was actually stolen. His supporters believe that they have been aggrieved, and now they are demanding justice. But Raila, because of love for country, decides to compromise with the people who stole his election. Look at that angle. If you look at it from there, this is a patriot, this is a statesman. But if you look at it from the other angle, this is a selfish person. Let us take a look at the handshakes briefly. The handshake between Raila Odinga and Moi happened after the 1997 elections. In 1997, Raila got 600,000 votes, equivalent to 10% of the total votes cast. So he was a distant third. We also have the handshake of 2007. And this, ladies and gentlemen, was purely an act of statesmanship. Let me explain. In 2007, Raila Odinga, supported by William Ruto, won the election. Kibaki, because he feared the 41 against 1, decided to rig that particular election and swear himself in at night. That caused a lot of chaos in this country, and people lost their lives. Raila had two options. One, insist that this is his victory and he is not going to leave it to somebody like Kibaki. Let everybody die if that is what it will cost. He chose the opposite. He said, there is no need for Kenyans to continue dying. Let us work with Kibaki. Even though what Kibaki gave him was useless, it was just on paper. The so-called principle was so useless that Raila was number 3 after Kalonzo Musyoka. On that, Raila was purely a statesman, ladies and gentlemen. Even if we disagree with him on how he handles local politics, on that, he was a statesman. In 1997, you can argue that perhaps he did it with good intention to help Moi have an environment where he could deliver. Others would argue that, no, he did it because he expected Moi to name him the next in line after Moi retired. And when Moi didn't, he walked away. That is debatable. Working with Kibaki also in 2002 is still debatable. You can say he did it for the good. He said we have to get rid of bad leadership of Moi, even if it meant he was not going to vie. Okay, he stood with Kibaki, knowing very well that Kibaki was capable of betraying him. Okay, but he still did it nonetheless. Even when Kibaki was sick, he campaigned for him and stood by him. That is for the good. Others would argue that no, he did it simply because he had been promised to be prime minister. And when he was not given that position, he left Kibaki. So those are debatable. But the 2007 one is purely an act of patriotism. Because this is somebody who has won election. He is aggrieved. He's called mass action, and this has led to a lot of problems. There is chaos. Lives are being lost. And he's being urged by his people not to surrender. But he asks himself a question. The people who are losing in this particular fiasco are ordinary Kenyans, and especially my supporters from Luoland. If you check the Waki report, you'll find that Luos are the people who died the most. Contrary to what people think, Luos were the people who died the most in that particular post-election violence. And Raila decides that I'm going to work with Kibaki, even though whatever he's giving me here is useless. He's making me number 3 after Kalonzo. But for the sake of peace, I am going to work with Kibaki. On that, ladies and gentlemen, if after winning election, agreeing to play, to be the third and be ridiculed, at times he would be even crying over Mukeka, he was not recognized in the hierarchy of the government anyway. He did it nonetheless. He stayed with Kibaki for that long. So on that, Raila was purely a statesman. 2018, in my opinion, is also debatable. It depends with how you're looking at it. Are you looking at it from the half full or from the half empty? Half full, instead of having a country that is divided with 2 presidents, people rebelling, which can give birth to real rebellion, by the way. That is how other countries started. He agrees to work with Uhuru, who he believed that he defeated in 2017, for the sake of the country. Okay? Half empty, he sees an opportunity. Uhuru wants to betray Ruto, and Uhuru needs somebody to support. He takes advantage of that, and Uhuru supports him for 2022. That, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, is debatable. June 2024, in my opinion, is another case of patriotism. There are these Gen Zs in their 40s all over doing demos. They have to get rid of Ruto. Anarchy all over. They are looting. They are doing everything. You try to talk, sijui watakusalimia nini nini. It's anarchy. Okay? They make outrageous demands. They want parliament gone. They want what? They want Ruto gone. They are marching to State House. Threats everywhere. And Raila Odinga has two options. He doesn't like Ruto. He believes that he defeated Ruto in the last election based on their funny figures. And so, this is an opportunity. Because majority of the people leading this so-called Gen Z thing are from Mount Kenya, where Ruto got most of his votes. Claims are that this is being supported by both Uhuru and Rigathi Gachagua. And so Raila had a very simple option. As an opportunist, he would have just joined this. They have a serious force and make life unbearable for William Ruto. Chaos all over town. More people would have died. The military would have come in and many people would have lost their lives. Raila decides and says, I tried anarchy. I even tried all these demos you're doing. They didn't work. I don't like Ruto, yes, but I love my country. And for that reason, I'm going to try dialogue. You always accuse me of rushing to conflict, to violence before I even try dialogue. You are like Raila prefers violence without giving diplomacy a chance. In this case, I am giving diplomacy a chance before we try anything else. That, ladies and gentlemen, was an act of statesmanship. In my opinion, that was a good choice Raila made. And Raila could have taken that opportunity so that he could exact revenge on Ruto. But he said, no, I am not going to risk my supporters again. I am not going to go and risk their lives. I have been accused of using my supporters as human shield to get what I want. This time I'm going for dialogue before violence. And ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, that was an act of patriotism. Raila Odinga has done some things that are debatable, whether they are selfish or act of patriotism. There's how he manages ODM, that you can say there is no democracy, but on the other hand, he has ensured we have a political party that has stood the test of time. 20 years in Kenya's political space is a very long time. Parties come and disappear, or they become briefcase parties after every 5 years. ODM has been there. It has stood tall and is still there. So whether it is being managed well or not, one thing is for sure, Raila has maintained that party to date. Those are debatable. It is debatable whether his joining Moi was to give Moi an environment where he could deliver on his promises, or whether he believed that Moi was going to name him the heir apparent. And then when Uhuru was named, he walked away. So it's a debate. Depends with which side you are. 2002 is also debatable. You can say this guy joined Kibaki so that they could ensure Moi's bad rule does not extend through Uhuru Kenyatta. But also somebody would be, he did it because Kibaki had promised to make him a prime minister. And when Kibaki did not do, he walked away. Debatable. Depends with which side you are. But 2007, you can't debate. He simply, whatever he did, it saved the country. If Raila had refused to shake Kibaki's hand, I don't know, we might still be fighting to date. Or we would have been dead anyway. So that was an act of patriotism, in my opinion. In 2018, it's also debatable. He joined Uhuru Kenyatta so that Uhuru can have an environment to deliver Big Four. Okay, you have one country, because he had sworn himself as a president. You never know where that would have led if people refuse to pay tax, etc. That is how rebels are born. What he did, some people are saying it was a good thing. It was selfless. He believed that Uhuru had stolen his victory. So by joining Uhuru, that was an act of patriotism. Okay. But others are also saying he joined because Uhuru had promised to support him for 2022. Those are debatable. But 2024 June is also not debatable. It's an act of patriotism, because Raila Odinga would have just joined them and make the country even more ungovernable. When he refused, he's being opposed by the same people. The so-called Gen Zs are all over opposing Raila and calling him names. Why? They expected him to join them in their anarchy. And so Raila had an opportunity to remain loved, to remain the hero of the people. He could have just joined this and joined the chaos, but he didn't. He said, I'm going to choose dialogue over chaos this time round. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not even debatable. That is purely an act of patriotism. So if you asked me, is Raila Odinga a misunderstood statement, or is Raila Odinga a selfish politician? I can say, depends. There are things that Raila Odinga has done that you can question. But there are other things that he has done that are straightforward act of statesmanship. And I've given you examples. So the decision here is you compare how many times has he done something that is giving Kenya peace. Even today, we have that peace. When he joined Ruto, the Gen Zs and their bitterness, and the bitterness was localized now on X. Gen Zs and their bitterness went back to social media, not on the street. So you have peace. You can go to town. You can transact thanks to Raila Odinga's actions. If he chose otherwise, we may not be even making this video now. So I want to say this because I need to be very careful also. I might, because I'm impressed by what he did in June, decide and say he is a good guy. Or I might say that based on the handshakes of 97, the handshake of 2002, and the handshake of 2018, and say, in my opinion, as somebody who has criticized Raila, I believe these were selfish acts. And then also blanketly condemn him. I wouldn't do that. This is where now I ask you the question, based on what I've shared with you, what do you think? There are cases where I have shown you that Raila Odinga has practiced statesmanship. But there are cases where I've told you it depends with which side you are, because another angle would be he did it for this. Other people can also argue. But there are cases where you don't argue, like 2007 and 2024. These particular arrangements, they have no argument. They don't benefit Raila so much. In fact, the opposite would make him the people's darling. But he chooses them for the sake of the country. And so I want to ask you, based on that, what is your opinion? Would you classify Raila Odinga as a statesman or as a selfish politician? Based on the facts that we've shared, are you saying he's a statesman or are you saying he's a selfish opportunist? I want to hear from you. Anyway, if you want to know why Raila Odinga is likely to win the AUC chairmanship come 2025, watch this video.